Okay, so today is Lag BaOmer. Lag BaOmer in the world of Chassidus, in the world of Kabbalah, this is like one of the days, becoming more and more popular. So I want to share a theme of Lag BaOmer with you. We'll do a little bit inside based, this is taken from different sikhs, different mamorim, but we'll just get a little bit of a taste of what Lag BaOmer is all about. So first of all, just a little bit of the background to Lag BaOmer. We know Lag BaOmer has two things. First of all, Lag BaOmer is mentioned already in Shulchan Aruch as a day that we don't have to mourn so much. But the expression in Shulchan Aruch is that Lag BaOmer is a day of Simcha Ktsas, a little bit of Simcha. Why is that? Because in Shulchan Aruch, the reason for Lag BaOmer is because the Talmidim, the disciples of Rabbi Akiva who died during this time, stopped dying, right? It's not clear what happened afterwards. Some people say yes, they continue to die after Lag BaOmer, but on Lag BaOmer they didn't die. According to the Maharal, a very interesting thing, the Maharal says that it says in the Gemara they died because they nahagu kavod zelazeh. They didn't give respect to one another. That's another discussion. It's not right exactly what all that means. But kavod is the gematria of 32. Says the Maharal that the disease they contracted, because they died with a particular disease, the Gemara says, so the disease they contracted was only during the first 32 days, and those that died afterwards is because they became sick, and some of them died afterwards. But on Lag BaOmer, no one died, so therefore that was the reason for Ktsas Simcha, a little bit of Simcha. But later on, more Kabbalistically I suppose, there's a much bigger reason for Lag BaOmer being a day of Simcha, and that's not just Ktsas Simcha, it's a lot of Simcha. And that is the yahrzeit of the Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, we know, was a Talmid. He was a Talmid of Rabbi Akiva. He was actually from the five Talmidim. So it says, in the Gemara it says that after the 24,000 Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva passed away, Hoyo ha'olam shomem, the world was desolate. The world was like empty, right? Which we'll talk about a bit later, hopefully. And then Rabbi Akiva says we've got to start again. So he chose five Talmidim, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Meir, and so on. Rabbi Yehuda, I think, and two others. And he rebuilt the Torah. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai became the main Talmid of Rabbi Akiva. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was an amazing Tana. First of all, he was an unbelievable Talmudist. There's almost no subject in the whole of the Shas where Rabbi Shimon is not mentioned. That's from a halachic point of view. But also he was a tremendous Kabbalist, and he didn't write the Zohar, he authored the Zohar. But then came the day of his passing, which was Lag BaOmer. And we'll talk about the significance of it being Lag BaOmer, and also what day of the Omer it is, and so on. And it was on that day that he had the most amazing passing, and very mysterious and very mystical passing. And We'll go through it in a minute. And he instructed. He said that the day of his passing was a day that he had come to the full perfection of his life, and that the complete oneness with Hashem. And he said he was going to reveal things never revealed before. And bottom line is, he instructed that the day of his passing should be a day of Simcha, a day of tremendous joy and dancing, and it should be. If you don't mind, just Robin and Golden. You sure? Okay. That should be a day of Simcha, it should be a tremendous day of joy, and that people should be mishtate, people should join in with his Simcha, and it'll bring tremendous bracha to the world, and so on. So much so, I'll just tell you a little quick story, so much so that there's a story in the time of the Arizal. The Arizal used to go to Meron on Lag BaOmer. Rabbi Shimon is buried. One time he went with his Talmidim, and Rabbi Shimon and the Arizal had a Talmid, a disciple, that he was so concerned about the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash that every single day of the year, including Shabbos, Yom Tov, everything, he would say the tefillah of Nachem. Nachem is a tefillah which we say on Tisha B'Av. We say on Tisha B'Av, he would say it every day of the year, but including days you don't say Tachna, including like Shabbos, Yom Tov, and so on. So when he went to Meiron on Lag BaOmer, he also said it. And later on, the Rashbi, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, came to the Arizal in a dream, and he said, how come your Talmud disturbed my simcha? And that disciple was punished afterwards, and that was an interesting story, but just shows you how tremendously, unbelievably great the simcha of Lag BaOmer is. I want to just read you, before we learn about what Lag BaOmer stands for, I want to read you a little bit, because what happened was his passing is actually described in the Zohar. Because he didn't actually write the Zohar, he authored the Zohar, also all the teachings of the Zohar was written by his students. And they included the day of Lag BaOmer in it, right? I'll read you just excerpts of this. It's in English, they've translated it. And it says like this: we have learned that on the day that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was to depart from the world, he began rearranging his teachings. The disciples found out that he was making, there's some bracket, not all these words are in the Zohar, there's a little bit of additional explanation here. So the disciples who became aware that he's doing this, gathered together at the house of Rabbi Shimon. Before him was Rabbi Lazar, his son. Rabbi Abba was one of his students, and other disciples, so the house was filled. When Rabbi Shimon looked up and he saw that the house was full, he wept and he said, there was another occasion where I was very sick, as explained in the Zohar, and Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair was with me, and I was choosing my place in Gan Eden. I was busy arranging my arrangements for Gan Eden. This is like heavy stuff. And they gave me more years I should be able to arrange it properly. When I returned to the living, a fire surrounded me and never ceased, so that no one was able to come near me without permission. In other words, that means is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, for the last while of his life, had this fire around him that was impossible to come close to, unless you were part of his Talmidim and you had permission and so on. Now I see that it stopped, and said that's why the house is now full, which was upsetting to him because it means that the Shekhinah sort of was going away from him, right? But then, it says while they were sitting there, Rabbi Shimon opened up his eyes and he saw what he saw. Doesn't say what he saw, something amazing, right? The fire surrounded his house again, so that everyone ran outside, leaving only Rabbi Lazar and Rabbi Abba, who were able to receive the Shekhinah, and the remaining of the disciples sat outside, and Rabbi Shimon said to Rabbi Lazar, his son, go and find Rabbi Yitzchak, because I made a promise to him that he would come with me to Gan Eden, whatever the whole story. Okay, so then they all went out, and Rabbi Lazar, his son, Rabbi Abba, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Chia remained, those five. Meanwhile, Rabbi Yitzchak arrived, and Rabbi Shimon welcomed him. Okay. So now, Rabbi Shimon said, now is an auspicious time to reveal secrets of Torah. I wish to enter the world to come without shame. For the holy matters that I did not reveal until now, I wish to reveal it in the presence of the Shekhinah, so no one will say that I left the world without fulfilling my task, that I concealed these special secrets of Torah in my heart until now. I will present them to you. Rabbi Abba should write it down, and Rabbi Lazar, my son, shall review them, and the remaining disciples must whisper them in their hearts. I see that today is special, said Rabbi Shimon, for Hashem and all the tzaddikim are rejoicing in my celebration. So it says Rabbi Abba, who is the one who was supposed to write, rose from behind Rabbi Shimon's shoulders. Rabbi Lazar continued sitting before Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon said, arise, my son, for another tzaddik will sit in your place. He rose and he sat down in a different place. Okay. So then it says, Rabbi Shimon wrapped himself in a talus. He sat down and he said, he quoted the pasuk and he said, Lo hamesim yihalaluka, which means the dead do not praise Hashem, and not the people who go down in silence of the grave, in other words. And it means we're not talking about dead people, we're talking about people who are wicked and are called dead, a whole sort of explanation in that pasuk. And those that are called alive are different. And he mentioned the pasuk, and he revealed all sorts of secrets of Torah that he hadn't revealed till then. And then he ended with a pasuk that had the word Chaim in it. So Rabbi Abba recalls, Rabbi Abba was one who was writing, right? I was writing in the middle of quoting a verse. Rabbi Shimon stopped at the word Chaim. I waited, wanting to continue, but did not raise my head to see why Rabbi Shimon had stopped, for I was unable to look at the great light that was shining around him. Suddenly I heard a voice call out a verse with the word Chaim again, and then another pasuk. I fell to the ground. When the fire and the light departed, I saw the great light. Rab Shimon had passed away. He was lying on his right side and his face was smiling. So that's the Hilula, that's the Yartzah, that's the passing of Rab Shimon Bar Yochai. Okay. Now, what is the greatness of this? And what is the greatness of Rab Shimon Bar Yochai? So Rab Shimon Bar Yochai has a special place. He was one of the Tanoim of the Gemara. But in Chassidus, particularly in Kabbalah, he's not just one of the Tanoim. He's a separate category altogether. And the question is, what is that? What is that special category? Okay. Actually, what I really wanted to do is, give me 1 second. I'm actually to grab a few chamashim, give me one and just give it to everyone. Some tillings. Tilling also. Yeah. All right. So. There is 2 places in the Tanakh where there's a hint for Lag BaOmer. Okay. The first is in Parshas Vayetze. If you take your Chumash, right? If you take your Chumash, 1 second. Page 166. Let's give you the context. Okay, the context is like this, that this was the time that Yaakov Avinu runs away from Lavan. Yeah? It's after 20 years, he's been working there, he's been pursued, he's been changed his wages, he's been driven crazy, not just physically but spiritually also. And he runs away from Lavan. And eventually Lavan finds out, and he runs after Yaakov. He was much faster than Yaakov. Yaakov had his whole family and his sheep and everything with him. They were traveling slowly. And Lavan catches up. The night before Lavan reaches Yaakov, he has a dream where Hashem comes to him and he says, you better watch out not to harm Yaakov. Don't talk to Yaakov, not good, not bad. Just take it easy. So he does, and he catches up to Yaakov and asks him why he left and why he ran away. And he said, I could really harm you, but your God came to me last night and told me not to touch you, so I can't. Anyway, they talk and the whole thing. So then they decide to make a treaty between the two. How do they do that? The famous part of the thing. They made like a covenant they're not going to harm each other, and they went and they collected stones and they created like a mound. A mound. It's called. Yeah. So have a look at the last pasuk of this. It says, "Vayomer Yaakov le'echov." Yaakov said to his brothers, meaning his sons, "Liktu avonim, gather stones, right? Vayikchu avonim, and they gathered stones. Vayasu gol, and they made a mound." See the word gol? Okay, we'll see what the connection is in a second. Gol is lamed gimel, like Lag BaOmer. 33, right? Vayochlu sham al hagol, and they called it, and they ate there next to this covenant. Then the next page we turn over, it says Vayikru loy Lavan. So Lavan called this thing an Aramaic word. It's one of the few Aramaic words that are in the Torah. He called it Yegar Sahadusa, which means the mound of the field. The Yaakov called it Yaakov Koraloy Gal Eid. Gal Eid means a testimony that's like a witness to the Gal, to the mound, right? Then if you have a look at it, then he says this is a treaty between me and you, and he says, go to Pasuk Nun Beis 52, few lines, right? He says, Eid hagal hazeh. This gal is a testimony. Ve'eidu hamatzeva. Imani, and it's like this monument is like a sort of a testimony. Imani lo ever elecha ala gal hazeh. I won't pass it to come to you. V'gam ato le savra la gal hazeh, and you won't come to me. V'samatzeva hazois l'ra. Passing this monument, anything to do anything bad. So Rashi says, Rashi makes a comment, I'll just tell you outside, that in other words, this gal was like a mechitza, was like a partition, right? Between Lavan and Yaakov, right? Which is why they called it gal, which is a mound. It was a symbol of the two sides shouldn't pass. But it says you shouldn't pass if it's bad. So Rashi says, Lara, for bad you can't pass, but for good, for business you can. In other words, it's not that it's out of bounds. We can travel to each other's land just for things that's effective and positive, but not for anything that's negative. Okay. Which is also, as the Rebbe brings down in the Sikh and explains, that's also why it was like wasn't a strong wall, it wasn't like a wall that you can't pass. It was a mound of stones, which means the symbolism of that is it can be dismantled. So it's there, but it could be dismantled, and you could pass it if it's effective, right? Okay. So the word gal, the Sfarim say, is a hint to Lag BaOmer, which we'll soon explain. The other place where Lag BaOmer is hinted, because the word gal means a mound, but also means, which is really like a vachitza, means like a partition. But the word gal also means to reveal, legalot, right? So let's have a look in Tehillim. If you can grab a Tehillim, if not, don't worry about it. I'll just translate it for you. Just 1 second. I think it's in the longest chapter of Tehillim, 119, in the Gimels. Yeah. Pasuk Yud Ches, Pasuk 18. Right? David HaMelech says to Hashem like this: Gal Einai, reveal my eyes, open up my eyes, in other words. Ve'abita niflois mitoirasecha, and I'll able to look, I will gaze at the wonders of your Torah. Right? So the great mystics say this is also another remez to Lag BaOmer, because Gal is 33. It's a hymn to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who fulfilled this idea of opening up our eyes and letting us look at the wonders of Torah, which is the secrets of Torah. In other words, the secrets of Torah is hinted in this pasuk. Niflois mitoirasecha. The wonders of the wonders of the Torah. Right? Okay. So like this, there's a theme of Lag BaOmer. The theme of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is like this. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai wasn't only, I don't know how much actually we're going to have time to learn inside here, but I want to share with you, because I want to finish it, so I want to give you the whole thing, right? We'll learn a little bit maybe. But Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai wasn't just a holy man, right? There were many holy people. And he also wasn't just a makubal. He wasn't just a great mystic, right? There were other, now Kabbalah is a very important part of Torah. It's the secrets of Torah. Pnimiyas Torah, as we call it, the inner part of Torah. Or like sometimes referred to the soul of Torah. So Torah has two parts to it. Torah has chitzonius, the body of the Torah, which is the halachas and all the things that we learn which are more revealed to us, which was what the Torah that Yidden learned since Har Sinai. Meaning everything was given at Har Sinai, but not everything was revealed at Har Sinai. That's how it works, right? Every generation there's new Torah that's revealed. But it's the external part of Torah, which is the way to function, the way to live, and all the analysis and the debate that goes behind that, and with that. And then there's what we call Pnimiyas Torah, the inner part of Torah, the soul of Torah. Until Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, before Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, there were other mystics that had access to the Kabbalah of Torah, to the Pnimiyas of Torah, the mysticism of Torah, but it was completely not accessible to anyone. Right? It wasn't revealed. It was supposed to be kept a secret. In fact, sometimes in the Zohar it's referred to as Rozin Do'iraisa, the secrets of Torah. A secret means something you don't reveal, right? So it's supposed to be like that. Yeah? For example, there was a great Makubal, a great mystic in the time of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, just before him, called Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakona. Right? He was a tremendous Makubal. He knew it's not, right? And there were others that had tremendous access to the secrets of Torah. And so did Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, obviously. But Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was a little bit different. There's two things about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. First of all, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai began a process of revealing Pnimiyus HaTorah. Right? Now, that process started very, very slowly because it was an amazing, amazing thing to do. The very fact that he authored a Zohar, and the very fact that on the day of his passing he instructed Rab Abba to write it down, write these secrets down, it was already a big, big step. In other words, you're taking the secrets of Torah and you're bringing them down to something tangible, something like it's writing and something that's going to be recorded, it's going to be able to be learnt eventually, although the Zohar was hidden for many years, but eventually it was found and eventually it was accessible, right? That was started a whole process, and even after that, they began little groups of Mekubalim and things like that, but it was still, it started the process. The process of revealing the hidden part of Torah, the soul of Torah, is accredited to Rav Shimon Bar Yochai. Later, it took a giant leap by the Arizal. The Arizal was another milestone. The Arizal said, who started having schools of Kabbalah, teaching people Kabbalah, but again, only those people that were really able to do it. But he did have the phrase, the Arizal said, mitzvah legalois zoisa chochma. It's a mitzvah to reveal this tremendous chochma, this tremendous wisdom. But even by the Arizal, it still was only those who could, and those who could attend Kabbalah, those who understood the revealed part of Torah, much, that kind of thing. And there were different tzaddikim, nistorim, hidden tzaddikim, and there were schools of Kabbalah. There were various Baal Shem Tov before the Baal Shem Tov. I don't know if you know that. There was Reb Odom Baal Shem, I forgot the others, but there was famous mystics and famous people that were all around, but it still wasn't available to the masses. And then came the Baal Shem Tov, and through the Torah Chassidus, to the teachings of Chassidus, he started making it much more accessible to everyone. It was still very limited because the Baal Shem Tov, sort of his Torahs were accessible to everyone, but they were more cryptic. The Alter Rebbe took it to another level in terms of writing the Tanya and making it accessible and understandable to the masses. And as each generation develops, the Pnimiyus HaTorah, the inner part of Torah, becomes more and more and more accessible to all those that want. And today it's like fully accessible. Okay.
Is there somebody today that's like
Sorry?
Is there somebody today?
So there's somebody. It's the teachings that we have.
Yeah, but there's no one person today.
No, it's not. No. I mean, Chassidim follow their Rebbe, but
Yeah.
right, but that's no. But it comes to Baal Shem Tov, it comes from the Rabbeim, and afterwards, and in Chassidus Chabad, it's the Tanya and the Rebbe's works and so on. Okay. I mean, the Rebbe also took it to a whole nother level. He made it much more accessible than it was in the times of the Alter Rebbe. So, yeah. Which is a whole other discussion of how that all evolves. But okay, so that's one thing. But what does it mean to reveal Kabbalah? What does that mean? So it's accessible. That's what it means. No. Because we find a few interesting things about the Rashbi. First of all, the revelation of the Pnimiyus HaTorah, even in Torah itself. What do I mean? Another unique thing about Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, different to the other mystics that came before him, is the following. We have in the time of the Tanoim, meaning the rabbis of the Mishnah, you had those that were Talmudists, that were halachas, right? And those that were Mekubalim. So Rav Nechunya ben Hakona, for example, they were both very, very knowledgeable. But let's say take Rav Nechunya ben Hakona, for example, who was a great Mekubal. You don't find him quoted so often in Gemara. Because his world was the world of Pnimiyus HaTorah, right? The world of Kabbalah, yeah. Then you have other Tanoim who are massively quoted in Gemara. But you don't find such an emphasis of them being in the world of Pnimiyus HaTorah, right? The Chidush of Rav Shimon Bar Yochai was that there's not, as I said before, there's not a section in Shas that he's not quoted. He was extremely prominent as a Talmudist, as a halachist, and yet, unbelievably, the one that is create the seminal work of Kabbalah and responsible ultimately for the dissemination of Kabbalah that we have today, Pnimiyus HaTorah, through Kabbalah, through Chassidus, and so on. Yeah? What's the pshat? In other words, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's idea is not only that he revealed Pnimis HaTorah, but he brought Pnimis HaTorah into places where it's not normally revealed. In other words, he combined the two. He combined the Nigla, the revealed part of Torah, with the Pnimis HaTorah, or the other way around. So he brought the Pnimis HaTorah into the revealed part of Torah, right? So much so that it became possible to actually learn, if you learn the right literature and so on, to learn the revealed part of Torah and understand it Kabbalistically. They say about the Arizal that he would take a section of Gemara, and during the week he would learn the halachic point of view. And every day he would develop a different perspective on a halachic level. And on Shabbos he would learn the same Gemara but al pi Kabbalah. You understand? Al pi Kabbalah. If you look at the Zohar itself, the Zohar doesn't explain halachic parts of the Torah al pi Kabbalah. It just explains Kabbalah. But Rav Shimon Bar Yochai's idea was to combine that with the thing. Okay.
We can't even begin to imagine.
I'm sorry?
We can't begin to imagine what learning Torah was pre-Rabbi Shimon.
Correct. Well, we can. I mean, we can learn the Gemara. Yeah, today we can't imagine how it is to not understand certain aspects of Pnimis HaTorah. Correct.
Yeah, we don't think outside of those. Our thinking is informed by that.
Correct. Yeah, of course. I mean, look, okay, that's another discussion altogether. What happened, why did Pnimis HaTorah become revealed when it did? In other words, because the world needed it. There were certain things that people had more instinctively and intuitively, maybe without the understanding of it beforehand, in certain terms of the way they served Hashem, right? But yeah, no, there's no question. As we get close to Mashiach, there's a massive explosion of Pnimis HaTorah. The ultimate revelation of Pnimis HaTorah when Mashiach comes, right? Now it's like a taste, but that's we have this amazing gift. Doesn't mean we're greater than them. It just means we have this amazing accessibility, right?
No, I think they were greater.
Sorry?
They were greater because they had faith without this.
Correct. Today we couldn't survive that Pnimis HaTorah. Yeah. So what am I getting at? I'm getting at a theme like this. The theme is Shimon Bar Yochai wasn't just holy, he was able to bring this is the crux of the theme of Lag BaOmer. Not just the holiness of Rashbi or the holiness of Pnimis HaTorah, but the ability to bring it down to the lower levels. Okay. So let's explain them in a few ways. Okay. Let's take one example. So the other theme of Lag BaOmer is Rabbi Akiva, right? So Rabbi Akiva had 24,000 Talmidim. The Gemara says they all died in one period. Why should they nohagu kavod zeh lo zeh? They didn't respect each other. Which we had the famous question, and I've talked about this before, that what does it mean they didn't respect each other? So we learned, actually no, the truth is they were very holy people, and they each understood Rabbi Akiva in an extremely deep way, and they had Avas Yisrael. That Avas Yisrael because Rabbi Akiva taught that, in fact, this is the question, right? How can it be that they didn't respect each other when they were all Talmidim, holy Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva, who taught Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamoicha zeh klal godel b'Torah, right? He said Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamoicha is a major rule in the Torah, and they disrespected each other. So the pshat is no. They all learned by Rabbi Akiva. They all understood Rabbi Akiva in a very deep way, and because they understood in a deep way, they wanted everyone else to think the same way they did. And therefore, because of Avas Yisrael, they tried to impose their view of understanding Rabbi Akiva onto others, onto the other fellow colleagues, right? And it didn't work. In other words, each one was doing the same thing, right? So, it wouldn't work in this world. So ultimately, their very subtle high level is considered a disrespect, and as a result, they all died. Now, the Gemara says, after they died, Hoya ha'olam shomem. The world was desolate. The world was empty. And then Rabbi Akiva went and started again and took 5 Talmidim. The main one of them was Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and Torah was rebuilt from there. What does it all mean? So we have to understand, according to Chassidus, what this word means. Hoya ha'olam shomem. The world was desolate. What does that mean? Empty, right? It doesn't say they were empty. It doesn't say they were evil, or they were wrong, or they sinned. It says the world was empty, right? Because what actually happened, according to Chassidus, with them is as follows. Their problem was that they reached such a level that this world couldn't tolerate it. It was, we've learned before Chassidus these two worlds called the world of chaos and the world of tikkun, right? And the world of chaos is actually a more intense and higher world than the world of structure, right? We've done this before. They reached the revelation of the world of Toyu. And in Toyu, it says they're so intense, the light. So it says in Chassidus, I don't have time now to go into the whole meaning of Toyu, but the light was so intense that there's no integration. One thing can't integrate with the other because each thing in its own is so powerful, right? And therefore, there couldn't be integration, which is the idea of disrespect. They couldn't integrate with each other because they were so holy and because they were so powerful and because they were so intense, right? So it all exploded and they had to depart from this world. They actually reached an incredible high level of holiness. They were Talmidei Rabbi Akiva, they were great people. Right? But Hoya Oilam Shomem. But sorry, 1 second. Yeah. Yeah, okay. But they reached unbelievable level of holiness, but the world was desolate. The world couldn't take them. Okay. Now comes Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and he also reaches an incredible level of holiness. In fact, much greater than the 24,000 Talmidim. Where did he reach his ultimate level of holiness? In the cave. So him and his son went and hid in the cave for 12 years. They only ate carobs and water. What did they do the whole time? They studied Torah. And we are taught they studied Torah and reached an incredible level, so much so that even their mitzvahs were not physical. Even their mitzvahs were so high that they were able to do it spiritually speaking. They didn't eat matzah because they ate matzah in a spiritual way. They didn't a sukkah because they sat in a sukkah in a spiritual way. Right? By the time they came out of the cave after 12 years, they were on an incredible level higher than the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva. That also didn't fit with this world. What does the Gemara say? They came out of the cave and they couldn't relate to the world. And everything they saw, they burnt up with their eyes. And Hashem said, did you come to destroy my world? Go back to the cave for a 13th year. What happened in the 13th year? After the 13th year, they came and they were fine. And they were able to relate to the world, and etc. So what happened in the 13th year? They got demoted? Did they drop a level of holiness so they should be able to relate to this world? It doesn't make any sense, right? They would obviously go back into the cave, have the same experience as before, and reach a higher level, even a higher level of holiness. Right? And that's the pshat, because it goes like this. The best way to explain it in a simple and quick way is this. We find before with Rabbi Akiva a similar concept, right? What happened with Rabbi Akiva and 3 of his colleagues? Rabbi Akiva and 4 of his colleagues went into a spiritual Kabbalistic experience, journey, right? You know what I'm talking about? It says, Arba'a nichnasu lepardis. There was 4 that went, same like Nadav and Avihu, right? Nadav and Avihu we've spoken about, also were very holy. They came very close to Hashem. So, there's like the Rotzu and the Shub, right? That you can relate to the world or you can't relate to the world. Now, sometimes relating to the world means you're on a lower level, so you can relate to the world. Sometimes the ability to relate to the world is not because you've taken away the holiness, but you've reached even a deeper level of holiness. What is that? Because Rabbi Akiva and his 3 colleagues went into the Pardes, into Gan Eden or whatever, and 3 of them were damaged. 1 died, 1 went crazy, and 1 left the derech. Right? That's what the Gemara says. Yeah? They didn't survive it. Rabbi Akiva says he went in peace and came out in peace. He went nichlas b'shalom v'yatz b'shalom. Why? Because Rabbi Akiva went in with a greater bittul to Hashem than the other 3. In other words, when you have a spiritual experience, right? And that spiritual experience, as high as it might be, and as lofty as it might be, but it's about your experience, then you can't relate to anything outside of that experience. Right? Because the spiritual and the physical don't mix. So the more you reach the spiritual, the more you have a spiritual experience. If it's a spiritual experience, which means it's your experience of spirituality, it won't mix with anything else. And therefore can't relate to the Gashmis. But if you go, and this is what Rabbi was really about, but if you go like Rabbi Akiva, who was even a higher level than the other three, then his perspective was not about his spiritual experience. But he went into this experience and developed such a level of bittul to Hashem. Once your mindset is you just Hashem's, you belong to Hashem, your experience is because of Hashem, you reach the highest levels of Hashem's revelation, which is the essence of Hashem, that's neither physical nor spiritual, that transcends both of them, and that's where you are, you completely surrendered. It's not about your spiritual experience, your physical, it's not about that at all. It's just about oneness with Hashem. Then you can take the highest things and bring them down to the lowest level. And that's what Rabbi Akiva was able to survive. So now, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was in the cave for 12 years. And then the 13th year. What's the difference in number between 12 and 13? 13 is a very special number for us, right? 13 is Hashem Echad. Echad is Gematria 13. The 13 attributes of mercy. You give me the Sarachim, right? 13 is a big number. What's 12? So in Chassidus and in Kabbalah it says, and we can't go through this now in detail why this is, but just so accept me for the moment. 12 is the structure of creation. 12 tribes. There's a whole system in Seder Ishtalshus, in the evolution of the spiritual worlds, called in Kabbalah Yud Beis Gvule Alachsan, the 12 points of interaction or integration. It's got to do with the 6 midos, Chesed to Yesod, the 6 main midos integrating with each other. So it's like this idea of 12, right? 6 times 2. Whatever it is, on the highest level, even in the world of Atzilus, 12 is the number of creation, not only the physical creation, spiritual creation. The highest level of spirituality are all within the structure of the number 12. What's 13? 13 is what we call higher than Seder Ishtalshus. It's higher than, it's transcendence, complete transcendence, where it's not about creation at all, there's only Hashem. It's oneness, complete surrender to Hashem himself. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai came out of the cave after 12 years. As high as he has reached, he was still part of that experience, still part of the spiritual experience. So he couldn't relate to the world, because that experience, if it's spiritual, can't relate to the physical. Hashem says, go back for a 13th year. And that 13th year, he came to such a level of bittul that it no longer was about him. And therefore, he developed that amazing ability where he can be on the highest spiritual level and still have enough bittul to Hashem that if Hashem wants that level to go down to the world and he wants the world to be improved and he wants the dwelling place in this world, that's what happens. It's like the Rotzu and Shuv. The sin of Nadav and Avihu was they went so close to Hashem, but they couldn't come back. Real bittul is, you go so close to Hashem, which is a good thing to do, on whatever level you can. That's the idea of detaching from the world, with the purpose of then influencing the world. And that's Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. That after the 13th year in the cave, he could take the highest, loftiest things and apply them to the lowest form of existence. Which is why you find in the Gemara, what did he do when he came out of the cave? A year before that, he couldn't take anything physical. It says the Gemara, he came out of the cave and he saw a Yid running with a very simple Yid, not a learned Yid, very simple guy, not even a colleague of his. He saw a very simple Yid running Erev Shabbos with 2 branches of myrtle branches, Hadassim. And he said, what are you doing? It was Erev Shabbos. He said, I'm running home. I guess that's the source of bringing flowers for Shabbos, right? I'm running with 2 Hadassim. He says, why 2? He says, one for Zohar and one for Shomar, right? The 2 expressions of Shabbos. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai said, how beautiful the mitzvahs are to these people. And then he said, what does the world need? What can I fix? How can I help? And there was some story there with the Kohanim. There was people that were buried. They weren't sure where they were buried. And the Kohanim couldn't travel properly because they weren't sure the people are buried. So they had to avoid the whole road. couple of people who had a problem of traveling, taking an extra 10 minutes because they had to go around somewhere because there could be impurity there. And Rabbi Shimon Yochai himself went and he said, no, we have to fix it, we have to put matzevas. It's one of the reasons of matzeva, so that people should know where people are buried. It's simple things, and not Kabbalah, not Zohar, not even Gemara. Right? Why? And not because he lost his level, because he attained a higher level. Right? That's also why, and we're not going to have time for this, so I don't want to learn inside, but that's also why Lag BaOmer is on the 18th of the year, which in this, we go Chesed, Sheba Chesed. You know what I'm talking about? The Spheres Omer, right? What's Lag BaOmer? Hoid of Hoid. Now, in the Spheres, Chesed, Chochmah, Bina, Das, Chesed, words, right? Hoid is like the lowest in a way, because Hoid is like just someone who's serving Hashem because he's accepting upon himself. Can't learn, he doesn't understand, he doesn't have love of Hashem, he doesn't have fear of Hashem. So why is he doing it? Because Hashem said so. So it's a lower type of person. Kabbalah, sir. Hoid Sheba is even lower. And Hoid Sheba is the person that mamash understands nothing. He doesn't understand even that he doesn't understand. He doesn't even understand that something's beyond him. He doesn't get it all together. He's a Pashto Yid. He says a kapitel Tehillim and he picks up a lulav because you have to. Right? Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai can affect such a Yid also. Right? Hoid Sheba again, in the spheres, Hoid Sheba is like a stop. Everything else is different. There's a different category. Hoid Sheba is like the lowest. And that's Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the greatest bittul of Hashem, especially on the day that he passed away. And it's on the day that he passed away that he suddenly said, my teachings need to be written down. Written down is also like a physical thing. Up until now it was all in the esoteric world, in his mind, in his speech. But he says now it's going to be written down. Because that's the point of Lag BaOmer, it's going to come all the way down. Now I go back to the Chumash. There is a mechitza, there is a wall between revealed and hidden. There is a wall between Shabbos and the week. There is a wall between holy and mundane. And it's an important wall, because you need to know that they're different. There is a distinction. You're not supposed to go there for the wrong reason, and if you're not going to do it properly. Right? There's a mechitza between holiness and worldliness. And worldliness is not holy. And we shouldn't engage in worldliness just for worldliness' sake. But Yaakov built a matzeva and he said that there is a mechitza. We're not going to go across if we're going to be ineffective or destructive. But the mechitza is designed to come down. Ultimately, it's got to come down. Gal. When does it begin to come down? Lag BaOmer. Gal. 33. And in the pasuk in Tehillim that we learned, the Mamorim explain the same thing. What does it mean? Gal Einai, lift up my eyes and let me look at the wonders of your Torah. So they say a little bit of a different pshat. They say your Torah means the revealed part of Torah. Lift up my eyes, let me look at the secrets of Torah and bring them into the revealed part of the Torah. Again, bringing down the walls. That's why the Rebbes had an interesting minhag, starting from the Mittler Rebbe. And the Rebbe used to do this also in a different way. The Rebbe used to have a parade often for the kids on Lag BaOmer, and he would be outside Dafka. And sometimes he would even, on the way to the oil, he would drive by because they used to have, it was beautiful. I mean, parades by the Rebbe was something very, very special. But then after the parade with the Rebbe's talks, they would all go to a different area and they would have a carnival. Kids would have good fun. And later on in the day, the Rebbe would go to his father-in-law's resting place to daven there. And very often on the way, I was there once, they didn't know it was going to happen. They once, because they used to go to a park and then eventually they brought it to another street, Empire Boulevard in Grand Heights. They put up this whole carnival. And I was there by the carnival. Then I left, I took a break and I went to 770. And I was by 770 when the Rebbe came out to go to the oil. And there was a few Bachrim who were just hanging around seeing what's happening. And suddenly we see the Rebbe pulled out and he's going in the wrong direction. So he suddenly chapped, he's going to the carnival. It was amazing. So we all followed the Rebbe's car and then didn't know he was coming. The Rebbe came and he wanted to go into the carnival and it wasn't actually structured that way. So people suddenly picked up carnivals and booths and made way and the Rebbe just drove through waving to kids, like amazing stuff, like amazing thing. The next year they already made a pathway so just in case the Rebbe comes, and he came, right? But what was the idea? So this emphasis about going to the outside, going to a field. The Mittler Rebbe used to go to a field. The Tzemach Tzedek also used to go into a field and he would have the simcha in an open field. Why is it open field? Because the field is no walls. Because the whole idea of Lag BaOmer is to bring down the walls, right? What does that mean in our Avodas Hashem? In our Avodas Hashem means, this is important thing, that actually you have to go very high. Lag BaOmer tells you on the one hand, that you have to have access and you have to go deep, right? Just saying you have to engage with the world, that's not good enough. Because you'll engage in the world but almost be part of the world. No, we actually have to go to a place that's transcendent. We have to go to a place that is each one in our own way. We have to learn Pnimiyus HaTorah. We have to daven. We have to learn. We have to engage in holiness. And then we have to be so committed that it's not about us, it's about Hashem, that we have to take that holiness and bring it into our world, bring it into our routine, bring it into the way we do business and act and eat and sleep and deal with other people and so on and so forth.
That's eating on the mount.
Sorry?
That's eating on the mount. Says that they built it in the mount.
Yeah, I don't know if that's going to be, yeah, maybe that's sort of the same thing, yeah, I guess, yeah. So that's at the end. That's the whole word of Lag BaOmer. But the word Lag BaOmer is not just that you engage with the world, it's about Pnimiyus HaTorah. But you engage in the depth of Pnimiyus HaTorah, but so deep that then it can actually show you how to live. And you can break down the walls, bring it into the revealed part of Torah, the revealed part of living, and so on and so forth. A lot more to talk about, but we'll stop there. Lag BaOmer Sameach.